I walked into my brother's house wearing scrubs, and the first thing I heard was my mother's laugh. Sharp, cutting, designed to draw attention. Emma, seriously? Playing dress-up at 30? She stood by the punch bowl, martini glass in hand, her voice carrying across the crowded living room. You know this is a costume party, not a hospital, right? Jason, my older brother, turned from the group of guests he'd been entertaining with what I'm sure was another thrilling courtroom story. His wife Victoria stood beside him in a perfectly tailored power suit, her CEO costume complete with a name tag that read, Boss Lady. They both looked at me and laughed. Still pretending to be a doctor, sis, Jason called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. I forced a smile, the kind I'd perfected over years of family gatherings, the kind that said I was fine, even when I wasn't. I just finished a 36-hour shift at Metropolitan Hospital. My scrubs weren't a costume, they were my uniform. But explaining that would require them to actually listen, and that ship had sailed years ago. I noticed a distinguished-looking man in his 50s sitting near the fireplace. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Recognition, maybe? I didn't recognize him, though something about his face seemed vaguely familiar. He sat next to a young man who looked about 18, both of them quiet observers in the chaos of Jason's elaborate Halloween party. Hey, if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, you'll want to stick around. This story gets better, I promise. And if you enjoy stories about quiet victories, stick with me. Trust me. You won't want to miss what happens next. The thing about being the youngest child in the Parker family is that you're always playing catch-up to a narrative that was written before you could even speak. My father, David Parker, built his reputation as one of the most successful defense attorneys in the state. My mother, Linda, had been a high school English teacher before retiring early to focus on supporting the family, which mostly meant supporting Jason. Jason was the golden child, literally. When he was born, Mom used to joke that he had a halo. When I was born 3 years later, the joke became that I was the bonus child, unplanned, unexpected, and ultimately unnecessary to the family's perfect portrait. I remember being 10 years old sitting at the dinner table, announcing that I wanted to be a doctor when I grew up. Dad had looked up from his steak, fork paused midair, and laughed. Not a cruel laugh exactly, more dismissive. Like I'd just said I wanted to be an astronaut or a princess. Honey, girls don't need to put themselves through all that stress, he'd said, cutting another piece of meat. You'll get married, have kids, that's what matters. Mom had nodded, smiling at me in that patient way she had. Maybe you could be a teacher, like me, or a nurse. That's a nice, steady job for a woman. Jason had just rolled his eyes. Can we talk about something interesting? I got an A on my mock trial today. And just like that, the conversation shifted. It always shifted to Jason. When I got accepted to medical school at 22, I thought maybe, finally, they'd see me. Really see me. I'd worked my ass off through undergrad, maintaining a 3.9 GPA while working 2 part-time jobs to help with expenses. I'd studied for the MCAT until my eyes burned. I'd written and rewritten my personal statement 20 times. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday. I drove straight to my parents' house, bursting through the door with the envelope in my hand. I got in! I got into medical school! Mom looked up from the kitchen counter where she was chopping vegetables. That's nice, dear. Did you think about what I said? About nursing school instead? It's less time, less debt. Dad walked in from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose. Medical school? Emma, that's 8 years of your life. You'll be 30 before you're done. How are you supposed to find a husband? I stood there, acceptance letter trembling in my hand, feeling the familiar sting of disappointment. Not in myself, in them. Jason came home that evening and the whole family gathered to celebrate his promotion to junior partner at Dad's firm. He was 25. There was champagne. There were toasts. There were phone calls to relatives. My acceptance letter sat on the counter, forgotten. The pattern continued through medical school. When Jason bought his first house, a beautiful colonial in the suburbs, purchased with a hefty down payment gift from our parents and his inheritance from Grandma Parker. The family threw him a housewarming party, 50 people, catered food, a banner that read, "Congratulations, Jason." When I got accepted into the emergency medicine residency program at Metropolitan Hospital, one of the top 10 programs in the country, with an acceptance rate of less than 4%, Mom sent me a text. "That's nice. Does residency pay well, or are you still accumulating debt?" I stopped trying to share my accomplishments after that. What was the point? Medical school nearly broke me, but not because of the academics. I could handle the long hours, the endless studying, the pressure of exams. What nearly broke me was doing it all alone. While Jason had family dinners every Sunday where Dad would ask about his cases and Mom would fuss over whether he was eating enough, I would sit in my tiny studio apartment, eating ramen, wondering why I wasn't enough. The worst part was the constant comparison. Jason was 3 years older than me, but in my parents' eyes, he was a decade ahead. He had the right job, the right wife, the right life trajectory. I had medical textbooks, student loans, and dreams that nobody in my family understood. At my medical school graduation, I stood third in my class, third out of 150 students. I'd earned honors. I'd received 2 academic awards. I'd matched into my top choice residency program. My parents arrived 20 minutes late. They sat in the back. When I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, Dr. Emma Parker, I looked for them in the crowd. Mom was checking her phone. Dad was yawning. Afterward, at the reception, Mom pulled me aside. "That was nice, honey. But you know, if you'd gone into nursing like I suggested, you'd have been working and earning money for the past 2 years. This seems like an awful lot of school just to end up in the same place." I felt something crack inside me that day. Not break entirely, just fracture. A clean line down the center of whatever hope I'd been holding on to that they'd eventually understand, eventually be proud. That night, I made a decision. I stopped waiting for their approval. I stopped sharing. I stopped hoping. The thing about being underestimated is that it teaches you to move in silence. You learn to celebrate your victories alone. You learn that external validation is a trap, because if you need someone else to tell you you're worthy, you'll spend your whole life chasing that acknowledgement. Residency was brutal. 80-hour work weeks, 36-hour shifts, life-or-death decisions made at 3 a.m. on 4 hours of sleep. I lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment that smelled like the Thai restaurant downstairs. I ate hospital cafeteria food because I couldn't afford anything else. My student loan debt hit $250,000, but I didn't complain, not to my family anyway. They didn't ask, so I didn't tell. The family group chat was a special kind of torture. Jason posted constantly pictures of his latest courtroom victory, his anniversary dinner with Victoria, their vacation to the Bahamas. Mom and Dad would respond with heart emojis and congratulations. I posted once, during my second year of residency, a picture of my white coat with my name embroidered on it, Dr. Emma Parker. No one responded. The message sat there, ignored, while 3 messages down, Jason posted about winning a case and received 17 responses. I muted the chat after that. The fracture that started at graduation deepened during my second year of residency. I was working in trauma, and we got a 15-year-old kid rushed in after a motorcycle accident. Multiple injuries, internal bleeding. The attending physician was tied up with another critical patient, so I led the initial assessment and proposed a treatment plan. The attending overruled me, ordered different interventions. I respected the hierarchy. I was just a resident, but I knew my assessment was right. I'd seen this presentation before. I'd studied the research. The kid didn't make it. I spent that night sitting in the on-call room, replaying every moment, wondering if I'd spoken up more forcefully, if I'd advocated harder, would it have made a difference? The rational part of my brain knew that not every patient can be saved. The emotional part blamed myself. I called my mom the next morning, exhausted and devastated. I needed someone to tell me I'd done everything I could, that sometimes medicine isn't enough, that it wasn't my fault. "Mom, I lost a patient last night." There was a pause. Then, "See, Emma, this is what I was talking about. This job is too much stress, too much pressure. You should have gone into nursing, fewer responsibilities, less emotional burden. It's not too late to switch, you know." I hung up, sat on my bed, stared at the wall. That was the moment I truly understood. They would never see me. Not really, because seeing me would require them to admit they'd been wrong about me from the start. And the Parker family didn't admit mistakes. I made a decision that day. I cut back contact to the bare minimum. Obligatory appearances at major holidays, brief responses in the group chat, polite but distant. I stopped sharing anything real. They didn't want to know who I actually was. They wanted me to fit into the box they'd built for me. So I let them think I was still struggling, still figuring it out, still the little sister who couldn't quite measure up to Jason's success. Meanwhile, I threw myself into work completely. If my family wouldn't see me, my patients would. If I couldn't earn my father's respect, I'd earn the respect of my colleagues. If my mother wouldn't be proud of me, I'd be proud of myself. I stopped going home for every family dinner, stopped attending Jason's work events, stopped pretending I belonged in a family that had never made space for me. And slowly, quietly, I started building something they knew nothing about. The third year of residency was when everything changed. That was when I met Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Sarah was 45, a veteran ER attending physician who'd been at Metropolitan for 15 years. She was known for two things: brilliant clinical judgment and zero tolerance for incompetence. She was also one of the only female attending physicians in a department still dominated by men. I was working a particularly chaotic overnight shift: 3 car accident victims, a cardiac arrest, and a woman in active labor who'd gone into distress. The department was understaffed. The attending was tied up with the cardiac arrest, and everything was falling apart. I took charge. I triaged the accident victims, prioritized treatments, coordinated with the OR for the crash patient who needed emergency surgery, and managed the obstetric emergency until the OB team arrived. I moved through that chaos like I was born for it, calm, decisive, efficient. When the dust settled at 6 a.m., Sarah found me in the break room, drinking my 4th cup of terrible hospital coffee. "You were impressive tonight, Dr. Parker." I looked up, surprised. Sarah Mitchell didn't give compliments lightly. "Thank you, Dr. Mitchell." She sat down across from me, studying my face with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You have something rare, not just clinical skill, though you clearly have that. You have the ability to stay calm when everyone else is panicking. That's not something I can teach. You either have it or you don't." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. "How are you holding up? Residency's brutal. I'm fine." She smiled, a knowing smile. That's what we all say. But I saw your file, Emma. Top of your class in medical school. Stellar evaluations. You're working twice as hard as everyone else and acting like it's normal." "I just want to be a good doctor." "You want to be more than good. You want to be exceptional. I recognize that because I was you 20 years ago." She paused. "Let me guess. Family doesn't understand what you do?" I must have flinched because she nodded. "Thought so. Listen, I'm not one for long heart-to-hearts, but I'll tell you what someone should have told me. You don't need their validation. Build your career for yourself. The right people will see your value. The wrong people, they'll spend their whole lives missing out on knowing someone extraordinary." That conversation changed something in me. Sarah became my mentor, not just in medicine, but in life. She taught me that being a good doctor wasn't enough in emergency medicine. You had to be a leader. You had to manage chaos, coordinate teams, make split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death. She pushed me harder than anyone ever had, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen, really seen. Not as Jason's little sister, not as the daughter who didn't live up to expectations, but as Dr. Emma Parker, skilled, capable, and exactly where I was meant to be. I discovered my real talent during a mass casualty incident in my 3rd year. A multi-vehicle pileup on the interstate, 15 casualties incoming. The ER descended into controlled chaos. I watched other residents freeze, overwhelmed by the scope of it. Attendings barked orders, nurses moved frantically, and I felt calm, eerily calm. I triaged patients efficiently, prioritized treatments, coordinated with surgery, radiology, and the ICU, delegated tasks, made quick, decisive calls. When it was over, 6 hours later, we'd saved 14 out of 15 patients, an incredible outcome for that level of trauma. Sarah pulled me aside afterward. "That's your gift, Emma. High-pressure situations, multiple critical patients, chaos and crisis. Most doctors crumble under that pressure. You thrive in it." She was right. I'd found my calling within my calling. Emergency medicine wasn't just what I did. It was who I was. During my 4th year, I was selected as chief resident, a leadership position that meant supervising other residents, coordinating schedules, and serving as a liaison between residents and attending physicians. It was an honor. Recognition of both my clinical skills and leadership ability. I didn't tell my family. They didn't ask. In the group chat, Jason posted about making partner at the firm. 37 responses. Mom and Dad were so proud. I scrolled past it, feeling nothing. The sting had faded. They were living their lives, and I was living mine. We just happened to share DNA. Thanksgiving that year was particularly painful. I sat at the dinner table while Dad held court, telling stories about his most recent case. Mom asked Jason and Victoria about their plans to start a family. Everyone laughed, ate, drank wine. No one asked me a single question about my life. Finally, Mom turned to me. "Emma, honey, do you have a boyfriend yet? You're 26 now. You don't want to wait too long. Your fertile years won't last forever." I took a sip of water, keeping my face neutral. "I'm focused on my career right now." "That's what you always say." She sighed. "I just worry about you, that's all. Medicine is fine, but don't let it take over your whole life. You need balance. Family, a husband, children." "Linda's right," Dad added. "Jason managed to build a successful career and get married. It's about priorities." I excused myself to the bathroom and stood there, hands gripping the sink, staring at my reflection. The exhaustion was visible, dark circles under my eyes from another 70-hour work week. But there was something else there too. Strength, determination, a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. When I came back to the table, they were discussing Jason's next vacation, 2 weeks in Italy. No one noticed I'd been gone for 10 minutes. That was the last Thanksgiving I attended for 3 years. After residency, I completed a 2-year fellowship in trauma and critical care. The training was intense, learning advanced procedures, managing the sickest patients, responding to mass casualty events, leading trauma teams. I studied disaster medicine, took additional certifications in advanced trauma life support, attended conferences, published research papers. I was building something, not for them, for me. The hospital became my home. My colleagues became my family. Nurse supervisor Maria Rodriguez, who'd worked in the ER for 20 years, became like a second mother, the kind who actually asked about my day and listened to the answer. Jake Chen, one of the lead paramedics, became a close friend. We'd grab coffee after particularly brutal shifts and decompress together. Sarah continued to mentor me, grooming me for leadership. "You're going to run this department someday, Emma. I'm sure of it." I laughed. "I'm not even 30 yet." "Exactly. You have time to become legendary." When I was 27, Metropolitan Hospital offered me an attending physician position in emergency medicine. Salary, $200,000 a year, plus benefits. I accepted immediately. I paid off a huge chunk of my student loans in the first year, bought a BMW 5 Series, used but beautiful, started saving for a down payment on a condo. In the family group chat, Jason posted about his new Mercedes. 42 responses. I posted nothing. Let them assume I was still struggling. The following year, everything changed again. Dr. Richard Torres, the longtime ER chief, announced his retirement. The position came with massive responsibility, managing 45 physicians, 120 nurses, coordinating with other departments, overseeing a $15 million budget, and serving as the face of emergency medicine at one of the top hospitals in the country. Sarah found me during a rare, quiet moment in the break room. "You need to apply for Torres's position." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Sarah, I'm 27 years old. No one's going to take me seriously. You saved 43 lives last year during that mall shooting. You led the trauma response to a disaster with 23 casualties and got 22 of them out alive. You've published 6 research papers. You're teaching medical students. You're already doing the job. You just don't have the title." "I don't have the experience." "You have exactly the right experience. You have fresh eyes, innovative ideas, and you understand modern emergency medicine better than people who've been coasting on outdated protocols for 20 years. She leaned forward. "Apply for the job, Emma. The worst they can say is no." So I applied. The interview process was grueling. 3 separate panels, presentations on my vision for the department, questions about budget management, staff development, crisis response protocols. I prepared for weeks, barely sleeping, running scenarios over and over. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon, Hospital Director James Chen called me into his office. "Dr. Parker, thank you for your patience during this process." He smiled, warm, genuine. "I'll cut to the chase. The selection committee was unanimous. We'd like to offer you the position of Chief of Emergency Medicine." I sat there, stunned. "Sir, I'm honored, but I'm only 28. Which is exactly why we're excited. You bring energy, innovation, and a level of crisis management skill we haven't seen in decades. Your trauma response statistics are exceptional. Your patient satisfaction scores are the highest in the department. Your colleagues respect you. You're ready for this." I accepted on the spot. My salary jumped to $350,000 a year. I had my own office, a parking spot with my name on it, direct input on hospital policy. I was the youngest ER chief in the hospital's 50-year history. I went home that night to my small apartment, sat on my couch, and cried. Not sad tears, overwhelmed, disbelieving, grateful tears. I'd done it. Against every odd, against every doubt, against every person who said girls didn't need to aim so high. I'd fucking done it. I didn't tell my family. They were busy planning Jason's 40th birthday party, a big celebration at his house. The invitation arrived in the mail. "Join us in celebrating Jason's success." I RSVP'd that I had a work conflict. Mom called. "Emma, you always have work conflicts. This is your brother's milestone birthday. Can't you take one night off?" "I'll try, Mom." I didn't try. I spent that evening in the hospital, doing what I actually loved, saving lives. Over the next year, I transformed my life in ways my family knew nothing about. I bought a condo, 600 square feet, beautiful view of the city, hardwood floors. I furnished it carefully, making it a sanctuary. I paid off my remaining student loans. I built a savings account that actually had money in it. I traveled, a medical conference in San Francisco that I extended into a weekend exploring the city, another in Chicago, one in New York. I was living my life, on my terms, without needing anyone's permission or approval. The hospital threw a reception when I officially started as chief. There were speeches. James Chen praised my leadership. Sarah gave a toast that made me tear up. My team presented me with a plaque, "To Dr. Emma Parker, our fearless leader." I took a photo of the plaque and stared at it for a long time that night. This was my family now. These people who saw me, knew me, valued me. The Parkers were just people I was related to by blood. In the group chat, Jason posted about winning another case. Mom commented with hearts and congratulations. Dad added a "proud of you, son." I scrolled past it, feeling nothing but distant pity for what they were missing. They had no idea who I'd become, and that was their loss, not mine. I worked 70-hour weeks, but I loved almost every minute. Leading a trauma resuscitation, teaching residents, implementing new protocols that improved patient outcomes, coordinating with other departments. Speaking at a national emergency medicine conference about crisis leadership, standing on that stage, seeing hundreds of physicians listening to me, respecting my expertise. This was the life I'd built, the life they said I couldn't have, the life I'd earned entirely on my own. Still, there were moments, quiet moments, usually late at night after a difficult shift, when I felt the old ache, the childhood wound that never fully healed. The part of me that still wondered what it would feel like to have parents who were proud, to have a family who celebrated my achievements the way they celebrated Jason's. But those moments passed, because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. You can't make people see what they refuse to look at. You can't force people to value what they've decided isn't worth valuing. All you can do is build a life so full, so rich, so meaningful, that their absence becomes just a footnote in your story, not the whole narrative. I was Dr. Emma Parker, Chief of Emergency Medicine, leader of a world-class trauma team, a doctor who saved lives and trained the next generation, a woman who'd built everything she had through sheer determination and skill. And if my family never knew, that was their loss. I'd spent too many years waiting for them to see me. I was done waiting. I was done hoping. I was done needing anything from them at all. At least, that's what I told myself right up until the night of Jason's Halloween party. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening while I was reviewing patient charts in my office. Mom's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Our conversations had become perfunctory at best, obligatory check-ins that left me feeling more exhausted than connected. "Emma, honey, I need you to clear your schedule for Saturday night." No greeting, no "how are you," just a demand. "What's Saturday?" Jason and Victoria are hosting their annual Halloween party. It's a big one this year. They've invited colleagues, neighbors, everyone. The whole family needs to be there. I rubbed my temples, feeling the familiar tension headache building. "Mom, I have a shift." "You always have a shift. You always have an excuse." Her voice sharpened. "Jason never misses family events, Emma. He makes time for what matters. This is important to your brother, and you're going to be there. No excuses." I stared at my computer screen, at the schedule I'd already reviewed. I wasn't actually working Saturday night, but the thought of spending an evening with my family, playing pretend that we were close, that they cared about my life beyond surface-level pleasantries, it exhausted me. "I'll see what I can do. You'll be there. 7 p.m. Don't be late." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand, feeling that old familiar frustration rising. Sarah knocked on my office door, poking her head in. "You okay? You look like someone just told you your research paper got rejected." "Family stuff. My brother's throwing a Halloween party. Command performance required." Sarah grimaced. "The family that doesn't know you're a department chief." "That's the one. You could tell them, you know." I shook my head. "What's the point? They've made it clear what they think of me and my career. I'm done trying to prove myself to people who don't want to see." "Fair enough, but eventually they're going to find out. Might want to control that narrative." I thought about that conversation all week. Part of me knew Sarah was right. The longer I kept my position quiet, the more awkward the eventual reveal would be. But another part of me, the part that had been dismissed and minimized for 3 decades, wanted them to stay in the dark. Let them keep underestimating me. Let them keep assuming I was struggling while I ran an entire department. I checked the family group chat Thursday morning while drinking my coffee. Victoria had posted, "Halloween party theme this year. Professional costumes. Come dressed as your dream job or actual profession. Let's celebrate everyone's achievements." The subtext was clear. Jason would come as a lawyer, which he was. Victoria would come as a CEO, her fantasy version of herself. Dad would probably wear his courtroom attire. And they expected me to come as... what? A wannabe doctor? Someone playing dress-up? Mom commented, "Love this idea. Can't wait to see everyone's creativity." Jason added, "This is going to be epic. Emma, you better not bail on us." I didn't respond. just muted the chat notifications and went to work. Saturday arrived too quickly. I'd worked a particularly long Friday shift, a car accident victim who coded twice before we stabilized him, a teenager with a drug overdose, a woman in labor whose baby was breech. By the time I left the hospital at noon on Saturday, I'd been awake for 28 hours. I should have gone home and slept, should have texted my mother with some excuse, should have protected my own peace. Instead, I found myself driving to Jason's house at 6:45, still wearing my scrubs because I hadn't had time to change, and because some petty part of me wanted to show up exactly as I was, an emergency medicine physician who'd just spent the night saving lives. Jason and Victoria lived in a beautiful colonial in the suburbs, the kind of house that screamed, successful couple with good credit and family money. Cars lined the street. I could hear music and laughter from inside. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering my courage. This was a mistake. Every instinct told me to turn around and leave, but I'd already told Mom I'd come. And despite everything, some small part of me, the 10-year-old girl who'd wanted her parents to be proud, still hoped that maybe, somehow, this time would be different. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Victoria answered, dressed in her CEO costume, martini in hand. She looked me up and down, her expression shifting from polite welcome to barely concealed disdain. "Emma, you came, and in your costume?" She said it like a question, like she couldn't quite believe I'd shown up in actual scrubs. "Just got off shift, didn't have time to change." "Right. Well, come in. Everyone's in the living room." I stepped inside. The house was packed with people, neighbors, Jason's colleagues, friends I didn't recognize. Everyone was dressed up. A firefighter, a judge, a teacher, someone dressed as Steve Jobs. Mom spotted me immediately. She was dressed as a librarian, her idea of professional costume, I guess, and her face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, disappointment, and finally, that familiar condescension. "Emma, seriously?" She walked over, martini glass in hand, her voice loud enough to draw attention. "Playing dress up at 30? You know this is a costume party, not a hospital, right?" Several people turned to look. I felt my face heat up but kept my expression neutral. "It's not a costume, Mom. I came from work." Jason appeared with Victoria, both of them grinning. "Still pretending to be a doctor, sis," Jason called out, and several people laughed. Uncertain laughter, the kind people make when they're not sure if a joke is mean-spirited but don't want to seem uptight. "Something like that," I said quietly. Victoria stage whispered to a woman next to her, loud enough for me to hear. "Emma's been in medical school for forever. We don't really know what she does exactly. Some kind of medical assistant? She's very private about it." More uncertain laughter. I stood there, feeling the familiar sting of humiliation, the sense of being small and dismissed. But underneath it was something new, a quiet certainty that their perception of me had nothing to do with reality. I spotted the distinguished man I'd noticed earlier sitting on the couch near the fireplace. He was watching the interaction with an expression I couldn't quite read. Concern, maybe? Recognition? A young man sat beside him, maybe 18 or 19, both of them observing quietly. Dad appeared from the kitchen, dressed in his courtroom suit. He put his arm around Jason. "Everyone, if you haven't met my son yet, this is Jason Parker, partner at Parker & Associates, making the family proud." Applause. Jason smiled, modest but pleased. "And this is my daughter, Emma," Dad added as an afterthought, gesturing vaguely in my direction. "She works in healthcare." That was it. No elaboration, no pride in his voice. Just a dismissive wave before he turned back to Jason, asking about his latest case. I moved through the party like a ghost, present but unseen. People asked me polite questions. "What do you do?" "How's work?" And I gave vague answers. After years of being dismissed by my own family, I'd learned that sharing the truth with strangers at family events just led to more questions I didn't feel like answering. I sat at the dinner table, picking at the catered food, half listening to conversations around me. The distinguished man, I'd heard someone call him James, sat across from me. Our eyes met briefly and he smiled, a knowing, sympathetic smile that made me wonder if he'd witnessed my family's earlier performance. "You look exhausted," he said quietly, his voice kind. "Long shift," I replied. "What kind of medicine do you practice?" Before I could answer, Victoria loudly announced from the other end of the table, "Emma's very mysterious about her work. We're not even sure she's finished school yet. Could be an eternal student." She laughed, and a few people joined in, polite social laughter that made my stomach turn. I saw James's eyebrows raise slightly, saw the young man next to him lean forward with interest. But I just smiled, took a sip of water, and said nothing. What was the point? The party continued around me. Jason told stories about his courtroom victories. Victoria talked about her book club. Dad held court with legal anecdotes. Mom fussed over everyone, making sure drinks were filled and plates were full. No one asked me a single meaningful question. I was seriously considering making up an emergency page from the hospital, my standard escape route from family functions, when everything changed. Bill Henderson, a lawyer friend of my father's, was in the middle of telling a story, laughing hard, when suddenly his face changed. His hand went to his throat. His eyes widened with panic. He was choking. The room went quiet. Someone said, "Bill, are you okay?" He couldn't speak. His face was turning red, then purple. He stood up, knocking his chair backwards, his hands clawing at his throat. Victoria screamed. Jason froze. Dad started to move forward, but clearly had no idea what to do. I was already moving. Training kicked in instantly, the same training that had carried me through hundreds of emergencies. I dropped my napkin, moved behind Bill, positioned myself correctly. "I'm a doctor," I said calmly. "Let me help you." I performed the Heimlich maneuver. Once. Twice. On the third thrust, a piece of steak dislodged and flew across the room. Bill gasped, coughing, and then collapsed. The room erupted in chaos, people screaming, Victoria crying, Mom yelling for someone to call 911. I knelt beside Bill, checking for a pulse. Nothing. No pulse, no breathing, cardiac arrest. "Someone call 911 right now," I commanded, my voice cutting through the panic. I pointed at a man in a firefighter costume. "Get me a flat surface. Clear this space. Everyone else step back." People scrambled to obey. The authority in my voice left no room for argument. I started CPR, positioned my hands on Bill's chest, started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I counted out loud, maintaining the rhythm. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths, back to compressions. The room was silent except for my counting and Bill's wife sobbing in the corner. I nodded at Victoria. "Time me, count 2-minute intervals. I looked at Jason. When the paramedics get here, bring them straight to me. I pointed at another guest. Get me ice and clean towels." Everyone moved. Everyone obeyed. Because in that moment, I wasn't Jason's little sister or the daughter they'd dismissed for 30 years. I was Dr. Emma Parker, Chief of Emergency Medicine, and I was doing what I'd trained my entire adult life to do. 4 minutes of CPR. 5. My arms burned, but my rhythm never faltered. I'd done this hundreds of times. I could do it in my sleep. At 6 minutes, I felt a pulse flutter under my fingers. "I've got a pulse!" I continued compressions, lighter now, supporting his heart as it tried to restart. "Come on, Bill, stay with me." That's when James Chen stood up, his voice calm but commanding. "Everyone, please step back and give Dr. Parker room to work." Mom's voice sharp and confused. "Doctor, she's not a—" James cut her off. "She's not just a doctor, Linda. She's Dr. Emma Parker, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Metropolitan Hospital. She's the best emergency physician we have." The room went absolutely silent. I didn't look up, couldn't afford to break focus, but I felt the shift in energy. The young man next to James, Tommy, I heard someone call him, stepped forward. "That's the doctor who saved my life last week. I was in a car accident. Dr. Parker spent 6 hours in surgery with me. She's the reason I'm standing here." I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, heard Victoria's whispered, "What?" But I kept working. Compressions, breaths, monitoring Bill's pulse, watching his color slowly return from blue-purple to pink, sirens outside, footsteps pounding up the walkway. The front door burst open and Jake Chen, one of my lead paramedics, rushed in with his team. When he saw me, his expression shifted from professional urgency to relief. "Dr. Parker, thank God you're here." 57-year-old male, witnessed choking, followed by cardiac arrest, I reported, never stopping compressions. 7 minutes of CPR, pulse returned at 6 minutes, currently thready but present. No AED available on scene. Jake and his team moved in with practiced efficiency. "We got it from here, Doc. You saved him, like always." They took over, set up the monitor, loaded Bill onto the stretcher. His pulse was stronger now, his breathing assisted but present. As they wheeled him out, Jake turned back. "Outstanding work, Dr. Parker. We'll get him to Metro. You coming in?" "I'll follow in my car. I want to oversee his case." "Figured you'd say that," he grinned. "See you there, Chief." Chief. The word hung in the air after the paramedics left. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting after kneeling on the hardwood floor. My scrubs were wrinkled, my hands were shaking, adrenaline aftermath. I became aware of the entire room staring at me. James Chen approached, his hand extended. "Dr. Parker, that was extraordinary, though I've come to expect nothing less from you." I shook his hand, and that's when I recognized him, my hospital director. I'd been in meetings with him dozens of times, but I'd never made the connection, never knew he was friends with my family. "Mr. Chen, I didn't realize you'd be here." "Jason's been my neighbor for 3 years. I had no idea you were his sister until tonight." He turned to address the room, his voice carrying authority. "For those who don't know, Dr. Emma Parker is the youngest chief of emergency medicine in Metropolitan Hospital's 50-year history. She oversees 45 physicians, manages our trauma response teams, and has one of the highest patient survival rates in the country." Mom was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Dad's mouth was literally hanging open. Jason looked pale. Tommy Chen stepped forward. "Last week, I was in a car accident. Multiple injuries, internal bleeding. The ER was chaos, but Dr. Parker took control immediately. She performed emergency surgery, managed my treatment for 6 hours straight, and visited me every day during my recovery. She saved my life." "I was just doing my job," I said quietly. "No," James said firmly. "You were being exceptional at your job. There's a difference." He looked at my parents. "You must be incredibly proud of her." The silence was deafening. Someone in the crowd, I didn't see who, said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Her own family didn't even know. That's embarrassing." Whispers started. I saw people pulling out their phones, presumably Googling my name. I could imagine what they were finding. Articles about my appointment as chief, my conference presentations, the news coverage of the mall shooting response. Victoria's face had gone from smugly superior to mortified. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. Mom was gripping her martini glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Dad finally found his voice. "Emma, you never said." "You never asked," I said simply. No anger in my voice, just fact. Mom stepped forward, her expression desperate. "Why didn't you tell us? We would have been so proud. Would you?" I asked quietly. "Because I tried to tell you, Mom, for years. I sent pictures of my white coat. I told you when I was accepted into residency. I mentioned when I became chief resident. You dismissed it all. You told me I should have been a nurse instead. You said my career was too stressful and I should focus on finding a husband." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The room was watching us. A private family dysfunction playing out in front of 40 strangers. I should have felt embarrassed. Instead, I felt strangely liberated. "I have to go," I said. "Bill needs continued monitoring and I want to oversee his treatment." "Emma, wait," Jason started. "Congratulations on the party, Jason. It was enlightening." I grabbed my purse and car keys. James Chen walked me to the door. "For what it's worth, Dr. Parker, you're one of the finest physicians I've worked with in 30 years of hospital administration. Metropolitan is lucky to have you." "Thank you, sir." I walked to my car, started the engine, and drove toward the hospital. My phone started buzzing immediately. Texts and calls from my family. I silenced it. The emergency department greeted me like coming home. The familiar chaos, the controlled urgency, the team that actually knew me and valued my expertise. Maria, the nurse supervisor, looked up when I walked in. "Dr. Parker, I heard you saved a choking victim at a party. Jake radioed ahead. The patient's in Bay 3, stable, waiting for cardiology consult." "Thanks, Maria. I'll check on him." I spent the next 3 hours at the hospital, overseeing Bill's care, making sure he was stable, consulting with cardiology about his cardiac event. By midnight, he was resting comfortably, his prognosis good. I sat in my office afterward, finally alone. My phone showed 43 missed calls and 67 text messages. I scrolled through them without opening any. "Mom, Emma, please call me. We need to talk." Dad, "Honey, I'm sorry. Please come back so we can discuss this." Jason, "I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Please talk to me." Victoria, "Emma, I apologize for my comments. I didn't understand." More messages in the same vein. Apologies, explanations, justifications. I put my phone face down on my desk. Sarah knocked on my door, poking her head in. "Heard you had quite the evening. Saved a life at a family party and accidentally revealed your secret identity?" I laughed. Tired, slightly hysterical laughter. "Something like that." "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Honestly? I don't know. Part of me feels vindicated. Part of me just feels sad. Sad that it took a stranger recognizing my professional accomplishments for my family to even consider that maybe they'd been wrong about me. "That's fair." Sarah sat down across from me. "What are you going to do?" "Right now? Nothing. Let them sit with it. Let them realize that they've spent 3 decades dismissing someone who turned out to be exactly who she said she wanted to be." My phone buzzed again. Mom calling. I declined it. Over the next week, the calls and texts continued. My family wanted to talk, to explain, to apologize. I ignored them all. I focused on work, led my team through a particularly intense trauma case, taught a class to medical students on crisis management, attended a budget meeting, published a follow-up to my research on mass casualty triage protocols. I lived my life, the life I'd built without their support, without their encouragement, without their belief. On the 8th day, Dad showed up at the hospital. Security called my office. "Dr. Parker, there's a David Parker here to see you. Says he's your father?" I almost said to turn him away, but something, maybe curiosity, maybe that stubborn part of me that still hoped, made me agree to see him. He looked smaller somehow, standing in my office, older. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same chair where residents sat for evaluations, where colleagues discussed cases, where I'd interviewed candidates for physician positions. "Nice office," he said awkwardly. "Thank you." "Emma, your mother and I have been trying to reach you." "I know." He shifted uncomfortably. "We want to apologize. We didn't understand what you'd accomplished." "You didn't want to understand," I said quietly. "I tried to tell you for years, but understanding would have required you to admit that maybe your assumptions about me, about what I was capable of, about what I should want from life, were wrong. And admitting that would have meant acknowledging that you'd been dismissing and minimizing your own daughter for 3 decades. He flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? When I got into medical school, you told me I was wasting my time. When I graduated 3rd in my class, you showed up late and checked your phone during the ceremony. When I became chief resident, you didn't even respond to my message. At what point, Dad, were you planning to take me seriously?" "We thought we were protecting you. Medical school is hard. We didn't want you to be disappointed if it didn't work out." "So you decided to be disappointed in me preemptively? To make sure I knew from the start that you didn't believe in me? I shook my head. That's not protection. That's projection. You couldn't imagine a daughter of yours succeeding in a demanding field, so you decided I wouldn't. And when I kept trying anyway, you just dismissed it, minimized it, pretended it wasn't real. Emma, please, we're sorry. We want to make this right. How? I asked. How do you make right 30 years of being treated like I was less than? Like my accomplishments didn't matter? Like my dreams were just childish fantasies? He didn't have an answer. I spent so much of my life trying to earn your approval, I continued, trying to be good enough, smart enough, successful enough for you to finally see me, to finally be proud. And you know what I realized? It was never about me. It was about you, about your narrow view of what a daughter should be, about your inability to see beyond your own expectations. We love you? Maybe you do, but you've never respected me. There's a difference. Dad sat there, looking older and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. Part of me felt guilty, the dutiful daughter part that had been trained to make everyone comfortable, but another part, the part that had fought and clawed her way to where I was, felt nothing but a weary sadness. I need to get back to work, I said. I have patients who need me. Will you come to dinner this Sunday, please? Let us apologize properly as a family. I considered it. Considered walking back into that dynamic, sitting at that table where I'd been invisible for so long. I'll think about it, I said finally. He left. I sat at my desk for a long time afterward, staring at the wall of my office. My diplomas hung there. Medical degree, residency completion, fellowship certificate, board certifications, proof of everything I'd achieved. None of it would have meant anything to them if a hospital director hadn't validated it first. That thought stung more than all the years of dismissal combined. Sunday came. I didn't go to dinner. I texted Mom. I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. I need time. She responded immediately. Please, Emma, we're your family. We love you. I stared at that message for a long time. We're your family. As if blood relation meant automatic forgiveness. As if love could erase decades of hurt. Jason tried next, called me directly. I answered on the fourth ring. Emma, please come to Sunday dinner. Mom's a mess. Dad won't talk about it. Everyone's upset. Everyone's upset, I repeated. That's interesting, Jason, because I've been upset for 30 years, and no one seemed to notice or care. That's not fair, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me about my life? My actual life, not just perfunctory, how are you that you don't wait to hear the answer to? Silence. I can't even remember, he admitted finally. Emma, I'm sorry. I was so focused on my own career, my own life, I didn't realize I was part of the problem. You weren't just part of it, Jason. You actively participated. You laughed when Mom mocked my costume. You called me a pretend doctor in front of your guests. You stood by while they humiliated me and you joined in. I know, and I'm so sorry. If I'd known, that's the point. You should have known. I'm your sister. You should have cared enough to ask, to pay attention, to give a damn about what I was doing with my life. You're right. His voice was small. You're absolutely right. I was a terrible brother. I am a terrible brother, and I don't know how to fix it. I felt my throat tighten. Part of me wanted to forgive him, to go back to some version of family where everything was okay. But I'd spent too many years being small so others could feel big. I don't know if you can fix it, I said honestly. I don't know if any of you can. Because the problem isn't just that you didn't know what I'd accomplished. The problem is that you didn't care to know. You were comfortable with your version of me, the struggling younger sister, the one who couldn't quite measure up to Jason's success. And when reality didn't match that narrative, you just ignored reality. What can I do? What can any of us do? I don't know, Jason. I really don't. I hung up. 2 weeks passed. I threw myself into work with even more intensity than usual, led a successful trauma response to a multi-car pileup, published another research paper, mentored a struggling resident through a difficult case, attended a gala fundraiser for the hospital where I gave a speech on emergency medicine innovation. My life was full, rich, meaningful, and my family wasn't part of it. Victoria showed up at my condo one evening. I almost didn't buzz her up, but curiosity won out. She stood in my doorway looking uncomfortable in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. This was probably the first time she'd ever been to my place. "Emma, thank you for seeing me." I didn't invite her in, just stood in the doorway waiting. "I owe you an apology, a real one. What I said at the party, about you being a medical assistant, about playing dress up, it was cruel. It was intended to be cruel, and I'm sorry." "Why?" I asked. "Why was it intended to be cruel?" She looked surprised by the question. I don't know, because everyone always focused on Jason and you were just there, in the background. It was easy to dismiss you." "It was easy," I agreed, "because I made it easy. I stopped fighting for recognition from people who refused to give it. I stopped trying to convince you I was worth paying attention to, and that made it easy for you to write me off." "Jason talks about you differently now," Victoria said. "He's proud of you. He's telling everyone about his sister, the doctor." "Now that it's been validated by someone important," I said. "Now that there's social currency in having a successful sister. But where was that pride when I was struggling through medical school? Where was that support when I was working 80-hour weeks as a resident?" Victoria didn't have an answer. "I don't need Jason's pride now," I said. "I needed his support then. I needed a brother who believed in me, who celebrated my accomplishments, who asked how I was doing during the hardest years of my life. I needed family. What I got was dismissal and mockery." "We were wrong," Victoria said quietly. "All of us. We were so wrong." "Yes, you were." I stepped back. "Thank you for the apology. But I need you to understand. An apology doesn't erase decades of hurt. It doesn't fix what's broken. It's just words." I closed the door. A month after the Halloween party, I finally agreed to meet my mother for coffee. Neutral territory, public space, time limited. She looked nervous when I arrived, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup like it was a lifeline. "Thank you for coming," she said. I nodded, ordered my coffee, sat down across from her. "I've been thinking a lot," Mom started, "about everything I said over the years, about how I treated your career, your dreams, and I realize I was trying to protect you, but I was actually just projecting my own fears onto you." "What fears?" "That you'd work yourself to death, that you'd sacrifice everything, marriage, family, happiness, for a career that would just consume you." She looked up at me, her eyes red. "I watched my mother do that, work herself into an early grave, and I didn't want that for you. So I tried to steer you towards something easier, something that wouldn't take everything from you." "But you didn't ask what I wanted," I said. "You decided what was best for me without ever considering that maybe I wasn't you or Grandma, that maybe I could handle it." "You're right. I didn't ask, I just assumed." She wiped her eyes. "And in trying to protect you from my own fears, I hurt you. I made you feel like you weren't good enough, like your dreams didn't matter, like I didn't believe in you." "You didn't," I said simply. "You didn't believe in me." "I know, and I'm so sorry." We sat in silence for a moment. I watched people come and go, ordering their lattes and checking their phones, living their normal lives. "I don't know how to forgive you yet," I said finally. "I want to. Part of me wants to just let it all go and pretend we can start over, but I can't. Because every time I think about coming back, about being part of the family again, I remember every dismissal, every time you told me to aim lower, every time you prioritized Jason's smallest achievement over my biggest ones." "I understand," Mom said. "I don't expect forgiveness right away. I want the chance to know you, the real you, the brilliant doctor that everyone else sees, the The daughter I was too blind to notice. "I don't know if I can let you in," I said honestly. "I've built this life where I don't need validation from you, where I'm enough on my own, and letting you back in feels like giving you the power to hurt me again." "I won't," she said quickly. "I promise I won't." "You can't promise that, Mom, because the hurt isn't always intentional. It's in the expectations, the assumptions, the casual dismissals. It's in the comparison to Jason. It's in the values you prioritize, marriage and children over career achievement. It's baked into how you see the world." She was crying now, really crying. "What can I do? Tell me what to do to fix this." "I don't know if you can fix it," I said. "I think maybe the damage is too deep. Maybe the best we can hope for is a polite distance, obligatory holiday gatherings, surface-level conversations, the appearance of family without the actual connection." "That's not enough for me." "It might have to be." I stood up. "I need to go. I have a surgery consult in an hour." I walked away, leaving my mother crying into her coffee, and felt a strange mixture of guilt and relief. Over the following months, I maintained careful distance. I responded to texts, brief, polite, non-committal. I declined most dinner invitations. I sent birthday cards. I showed up for Christmas, 2 hours only, bringing wine, making small talk, leaving before the night got too heavy. They tried. I'll give them that. Dad asked about my work. Really asked, with genuine interest. Mom stopped making comments about marriage and children. Jason sent me articles about emergency medicine, trying to show he was paying attention. But something fundamental had shifted. I'd spent 30 years trying to earn their approval, their pride, their attention. And in one night at a Halloween party, I'd realized I didn't need it anymore. I had colleagues who respected me, patients whose lives I'd saved, a team that looked up to me, a career that fulfilled me, a life that was rich and meaningful entirely on its own terms. My family's validation had come 30 years too late. One evening, 6 months after the Halloween party, Sarah and I were grabbing dinner after a particularly intense shift. We'd just lost a patient, a young woman, 24, car accident, nothing we could do. Those cases hit the hardest. "You doing okay?" Sarah asked. "As okay as I can be." I pushed my food around my plate. I hate losing them. "I know, we all do. But you gave her the best chance anyone could have. Sometimes that's all we can do." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "How's the family situation?" Sarah asked. "Complicated. They're trying. I see that they're trying. But it's too little. Too late. Does that make me a bad person?" "No. It makes you a person who protected herself after years of not being protected by the people who should have protected you." Sarah took a sip of her wine. "You don't owe them forgiveness just because they finally realized what they lost." "Mom says she wants to know the real me, but I don't think she can handle the real me. The real me is someone who doesn't need her approval, who built everything without her support, who's fundamentally changed from the daughter she thought she had." Then maybe that's what she needs to learn, that the daughter she dismissed grew up to be extraordinary, and she missed it. I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. Thought about the 10-year-old girl who'd announced she wanted to be a doctor, the medical student who'd graduated third in her class, the resident who'd worked 80-hour weeks, the young physician who'd become the youngest ER chief in hospital history. That girl, that woman, had done it all alone. She'd built herself from the ground up, with no family foundation to stand on. She'd proven every doubter wrong. She'd become exactly who she'd always said she wanted to be. And she'd learned the hardest lesson of all. You can't make people see what they refuse to look at. You can't force people to value what they've decided isn't worth valuing. All you can do is build a life so full, so rich, so meaningful, that their absence becomes just a footnote in your story. I was Dr. Emma Parker, Chief of Emergency Medicine, a physician who saved lives, a leader who mentored the next generation, a woman who'd built everything she had through sheer determination and skill. They wanted back in now? After everything? They were welcome to watch from the sidelines, to see what they'd missed, to finally understand who I'd become, but I didn't need them anymore. I'd spent 30 years waiting for them to see me. I was done waiting. I had a life to live, patience to save, a career that fulfilled me, a chosen family that actually showed up. And if my biological family wanted to be part of that, they'd have to earn it, the same way I'd earned everything else in my life, through consistent action, genuine effort, and proving beyond doubt that they meant what they said. Until then, I had surgeries to perform and lives to save. And that was more than enough.